Now, when school authorities tell a mother, as you already heard, that her son is sick and needs to be on drugs, how in the world is she to know that that is simply a lie? How is she to recognize that what experts now call attention deficit hyperactivity disorder is simply not a disease? Now, such a mother is not an expert in the history of psychiatry. She does not know that psychiatrists have, for hundreds of years, used diagnostic terms, so-called diagnostic terms, to stigmatize and control people. I will only give you a few dramatic examples. When black slaves in the South ran away to freedom, it wasn't that they wanted to be free. They suffered from a disease called drapetomania. From drapetes, runaway slave, and mania. I'm not making this up. This was a legitimate diagnosis, just like attention deficit disorder is. Women, half the population of mankind, of course, if they were foolish enough to rebel against domination by men, well, then they had a serious disease called hysteria, which was due to their wandering womb. Now, none of those behaviors was ever a disease, and of course it's not a disease. But nor is attention deficit disorder a disease. No behavior or misbehavior is a disease or can be a disease. That's not what diseases are. So it doesn't matter how a child behaves. There is nothing to examine. If he's sick, then there must be some objective science to it, which can be diagnosed by physicians and objective tests. That's why as soon as you go to a doctor, they take a lot of blood and take x-rays. They don't want to hear how you behave. When I went to medical school 60 years ago, there were only a handful of mental diseases. I think there were no more than 6 or 7. Now there are more than 300. And new ones are, quotes, discovered every day. Labeling a child as mentally ill is stigmatization, not diagnosis. Giving a child a psychiatric drug is poisoning, not treatment. I have long maintained that the child psychiatrist is one of the most dangerous enemies, not only of children, but of adults, of all of us who care to the most precious and most vulnerable things in life. And those two things are children and liberty. Now I ask again, how can parents protect their children from the therapeutic state, that is, from the alliance of government and psychiatry? Basically, I think in the final analysis, they can only do so by disabusing themselves, getting rid of the idea that what ails an unhappy and misbehaving child, and there are, of course, many such children, in fact, all children at some time, that such a child is having a mental illness and the so-called treatment can help him. This is simply not so. Diseases are malfunctions of the human body, of the heart, the liver, the kidney, the brain, and so forth. Typhoid fever is a disease. You all know that? You don't question that. Spring fever all you have to know is English. Spring fever is not a disease. Now, why not? Because we all know that it's a figure of speech, a metaphor, a little piece of poetry. No, so are all mental diseases. Mental disease is a metaphor. The task we set ourselves to combat psychiatric coercion is important. I think it's important. You all think it's important. Not enough people think it's important. It's a noble task, a task in the pursuit of which we must, regardless of obstacles, persevere. Our conscience commands that we do no less.
Hello all, welcome back to Consciousness Rising, and that was the great Thomas Sars speaking there. he himself was a psychiatrist, so from the horse's mouth, he wrote something like 30 books, I think, on the subject, trying to expose this conspiracy and the fact that psychiatry has been used as a control method and, you know, doesn't really have people's best interests at heart at all. I haven't spoke about a lot of conspiracies, really. I've alluded to them because I'm much more interested in human psychology. But this really is a very, if you want to get into conspiracy, this is such an easy one to get into because it's an open secret, which is why I've called the video that. You don't have to dig around too far to see that there's so many nefarious things being done in the world of psychiatry. And also, you know, because of the field that I work in as a therapist, I'm not a psychiatrist, and actually Freud himself, who was a psychiatrist, who really started the whole talking cure movement, really, and we owe him a lot. No matter what you think of him, he himself didn't want it in the hands of medics. He saw therapy as a very sacred thing, and also didn't want it in the hands of religion, because before, talking to a therapist, it was often done in confessional booths in religion. He didn't agree with that, and he didn't agree with it being medicalized, or he didn't agree with it becoming a thing of control. He said that a good therapist should be an everyman who understands himself and understands people and has compassion and empathy. So this is a big subject. It's a huge subject. It's been going on for a long time, and hopefully you'll draw your own sort of conclusions and start to see the patterns as I've put this together. It took a while to put this one together, and it's a huge subject. There's parts of it I haven't even covered. I haven't even covered some of the abuses that go on, because maybe that's for another video. I'm not 100% sure yet whether I'll do that or not. But this is a huge subject. So yeah, let's make a start on it then. So it's the Psychiatry Conspiracy, an open secret. A lot of the video I'm going to be talking about the DSM manual, because this has been used in so many nefarious ways. I will be covering other things as well, but a lot of the links that I'm going to be making early on are going to be to do with this manual, because as you'll see, it's been used, it's not based in any science, which they'll openly admit. I've got a video coming up halfway through this presentation where I'm going to actually edit in a video of them talking about it. Psychiatrists actually admitting that they don't basically don't know what they're doing. But yeah, the manual is not based in any science and has been used in many nefarious ways. And I'm going to show that. So where did it all begin? Where did psychiatry all begin? Psychiatry and the DSM came from the trade wanting to be recognised as mainstream, alongside as mainstream medicine. So obviously you had mainstream medicine that were, dealing with diseases or broken legs or accidents or, things that do need medicating or, actual proper physical care. They wanted very much to be in the same vein and have the same sort of power, even though, you'll come to see that went very, very bad for a lot of people. So, as I've put again there, and I will repeat this a lot, it's not based in any science. A lot of it is made up. But it's a word spell. To me, it's like black magic. So, in the year 1890, they actually invented the idea of what they call, quote-unquote, psychiatric disorders. And a lot of what Thomas Szasz talks about in his books, and I've read a couple of his books, he's fantastic, a true, someone who really did want freedom, where they medicalise and call these things diseases, and they're not diseases. We all, express consciousness differently, and a lot of this is based in control, trying to control people. So in the year 1890, they invented the idea of psychiatric disorders. So that started to seep into the consciousness of people, that people are disordered or there's something broken or wrong with them. Okay. A guy called Emil Kraepelin was a psychiatrist that came up with the classification that there were biological illnesses in the brain, which is simply a lie. He helped invent the terms dementia praecox. That was the first term that is now known as schizophrenia, manic depressive, and paranoid psychosis. They're all very labelly. A lot of this is word spell. I'm not saying that people don't have issues, but what I'm saying is it's not necessarily a biological illness of the brain. It can all be explained with psychology. That's not for this video though, but I'm just going to go over some main points of where psychiatry came from for there. That's the sort of first sort of terms that sort of got branded about. The DSM-1, so this is the first printing of this book. There's 5 of these now, by the way. I'm going to go over each one of them. So hopefully, you'll start to notice a pattern here, because it's very, very obvious when you see it. So the DSM-1, which is called the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual for Mental Disorders, came out in the 1950s. It had 130 pages and 112 quote-unquote disorders. Some of the named disorders included homosexuality, thumb sucking, and gain of weight. Now don't forget that they're trying to link this to mental disorders. Okay, so hopefully you'll start to notice the thing. In 1968, they released a second manual, DSM-2, and it had 178 disorders. So it's growing, you see. At this time, there was a push to make the DSM in line with what's known as the ICD, which is the International Classification of Diseases. Now, these are real diseases, such as polio, or whatever. It's very easy to know what a real disease is. But they wanted to make these seem the same, that they're mental diseases when they're not at all. Disorders are literally being invented and voted on in board meetings. Now, I'll go into that a bit more later, I believe. So that's the DSM-2. So already, just go back a minute, from 112 disorders, you've now got 178 disorders. Then you get the DSM-3. Released in 1980, you've now got 259 disorders. So as you can see, they're growing all the time. This is also around the point at which they started to throw out all of Freud's great work. They threw out his psychology, and they turned everything into biological problems. They wanted to push it away from the psychology into the realms of biology so they can sell drugs, basically. It's more than that as well, but that is one of the reasons. Enforcing this mindset pushes things much more towards drugs to help with psychological problems, rather than going within with the help of a therapist to do what I call inner work. And I think I've mentioned this before. I can't remember what video it was, but I often call it medicating the shadow, and actually it's an avoidance of problems, if in many ways, to just go and go to some guy, tell him all your problems, and they don't often ask many questions. I have to say, today I work with people who are given drugs just over the phone, and I'm going to go into why this is so dangerous a bit later. But yeah, it's all avoidance of shadow work. We have emotions, and dark emotions, for a reason. In fact, some dark emotions are beautiful because that's how you see the light. Anyway, yeah, look at my videos on shadow work for that. But yeah, this is DSM-3. Continuing on from that as well, this is also around the time at which, I think I'm correct in this, the term chemical imbalance starts to be branded about to push problems more to a biological basis. And you would not believe the amount of people that think they have a biological, they have a chemical imbalance. I've heard so many people believe this, and it's not rooted in truth. And actually, in a minute, I'm just going to get a couple more slides in, and then I'm going to edit in a video to show you basically that they admit this. There is no test to find no chemical imbalance. It's just it's a talismanic word. So yeah, you sit and ask yourself, actually, because I think this is so common that many people believe this, and I'm sure you might have heard of it yourself. But the term chemical imbalance, yeah, very, very, very common. People think that they're broken on a biological basis, you see, but it's all been pushed and done slowly over the years. Then you get the DSM-4. 2 versions, look. Okay, this was released in 1990. It has 374 disorders, okay? And within its actual text, I think it's quite near the beginning, I can't remember exactly, what I've put there on the 3rd bullet point, I'm going to read it out, is actually written in the book, okay? So they even tell you their own lie. Although this manual provides a classification of mental disorders, it must be admitted that no definition adequately specifies precise boundaries for the concept of mental disorder. You see how dangerous this is. They even admit it themselves. And that's classic, you know, in a lot of conspiracy, when you start to delve into a lot of it, they tell you their own bullshit. So, yeah, I mean, that's in the damn book itself. So, you know, why do we need all these books? Why do we need all these disorders? And a lot of it, I think, as well, is herdthink. You know, we don't treat people as individual souls, as individual consciousnesses, and the fact that we all process things differently, we look at life differently, and, you know, it's all about getting people to conform. It's so obvious. This is the last slide before I'm gonna edit in a video now, just after this. But it's this guy here wrote a book there. I've put it there, Saving Normal. I have it on my bookshelf. And he is Dr. Alan Francis. He was the chairman of the DSM-4 task force, which was the book I just showed you. I'll just go back. So he was on the task force for this book, and he actually states there is no definition of a mental disorder. He actually states it there. And it's a great book. He basically just shows you how dangerous this all is. But yeah. Right. Now, this video that I'm going to put on now is a bit old, but it's still relevant. So, out of their own mouths.
Psychiatry in all of this time doesn't have one case report of one disease validated, not one. What they do is they meet at the American Psychiatric Association. They meet in the DSM committee, Diagnostic Statistical Manual Committee, and they vote on making new behavioral and emotional disorders. And they vote, and then they start immediately calling them diseases. And they tell people, they tell the public these are diseases. Total fraud. Total fraud.
The actual truth about chemical balance is that it's an actual lie. Nobody has yet measured, demonstrated, or created a test to show that somebody has a chemical imbalance in their brain. Period.
What the American public should be thinking about is when they or their loved ones or their friends have received a psychiatric diagnosis, they should be asking the doc, geez, doc, where's the chemical test for that? Where is the objective test for this? And I guarantee you that they'll be told, we don't have a chemical test for that.
There are no biological tests for any mental illnesses that I'm aware of.
There are not current available tests to verify your diagnosis.
There is no test. There is no specific test to differentiate between, let's say, schizophrenia and bipolar disorder. Not a single test.
Yeah, we have not really confirmatory test for the diagnosis.
There is no test, there's no biopsy you can do that says this person is depressed, this person is bipolar.
We don't have anything really currently to identify mental illness per se.
No, there are no specific tests to confirm the diagnosis or show the improvement, like any blood tests or any x-rays or anything like that.
Oh, in my practice I don't do any tests. I just speak with people and listen to them, and then I make a decision in what kind of illness there should be.
We don't really have any specific blood tests or other tests that are definitive for any mental illness whatsoever.
What kind of biological tests do we have available today for detecting mental illnesses?
None.
There is no rational science behind what they think is the cause of these symptoms. The medications that are being given to people are, without exception, introducing chemicals that are altering the brain in ways which can be very damaging. And I'll go a step further and say that in the absence of a proven chemical imbalance for which the medications are, quote, rebalancing or fixing, the medications are in fact toxic.
How many patients have you been able to cure so far?
I would say one.
How many people have I cured? Well, there are no real cures right now in psychiatry.
Yeah. The idea of you asked me about the issue about how many people I've cured. I don't know that any of us are ever completely cured of anything.
I have not been able to cure many patients.
I have cured none of my patients.
So you have to ask the classic Roman question, legal question, cui bono, who benefits? The people who make the diagnosis.
Okay, so yeah, that was out of their own mouths. You know, that video is quite old, but it's still, nothing's changed. So yeah. So we get a few statistics here. You get 120 million people a year, I think, that is supposed to say diagnosed with a mental illness. Now that's quite an old figure. I bet it's more now. In fact, since the scamdemic, it's probably way, way, way more. The ICD now mirrors the DSM. So at this point, they are saying literally that mental illness is biological or a quote-unquote chemical imbalance, which as I've just showed you is a load of bollocks. There's also a clause within the DSM, and it's there, I've written there, V15.81, which is a non-compliance with treatment. Now, that gives them the power, and the state the power, to actually, you know, if you don't comply, they'll lock you in a cell or whatever and take away your rights and drug you to the eyeballs, you know. So again, what I said, it's all about state control, and yeah, controlling people's moods. But yeah, it's all about non-compliance. If you don't comply with their system, and that's really what the film One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest is about. If you watch that, that's a fantastic film. I think it came out 1973, 74, somewhere like that, based on a stage play. It's a fantastic film, and that film is very important, actually, I think, to go alongside with this. I might even break it down one day, because I do enjoy doing film breakdowns, but they take a long time to put together. I'm still working on that Joker one that I've been promising for ages. But yeah, so yeah, you've got this clause, non-compliance with treatment, which gives them the, you know, a lot of power that they should not have. This scumbag on the left is called Joseph Biederman, and he invents a condition known as pediatric bipolar disorder. And the claim is that infants can have this disorder, and he also claims that it can begin when a child opens their eyes, trying to medicalize newborn children. Yeah, that's who these people are. Very, very nefarious, dangerous individuals. You know, to actually say that, can you believe that? To actually state that a child can, as soon as he's opened his eyes, he can have a thing called a bipolar disorder, which is another invented term. It's all wordplay, it's all spell play, and people believe it. So yeah, this is deep and dark, and I'll show you how dark it goes in the next slide, actually, because you've also got a DSM basically for children. This book diagnostical classification of mental health and developmental disorders of infancy and early childhood is targeted from 0 to 3-year-olds. So they want them drugged as soon as they're out of the womb. As soon as you're out of the womb, you've not even experienced much in life and there's something wrong with you. All conformity, all control, and it's very, very nefarious. Imagine, it makes me so angry. Imagine a 1-year-old being given antipsychotic meds or being labelled as, having something wrong with them, broken in their brain, when they're actually just trying to develop. And as if you've watched my channel for a long time, I think it was episode 2, when I talk about the subconscious and how it forms between the 3rd trimester and 7 years of age, how dangerous this is. They're not even fully in their consciousness yet till around, 7 years old. And they want them drugged. God, it's outrageous. It's not hard to look this stuff up. But this goes on all the time. I see it all the time. Children on antipsychotic medication. What are we doing to them? It's outrageous. Okay, I'm going to talk about side effects, which I've actually put there in brackets because actually they're not side effects, they're direct effects of antidepressants. Okay, and this is listed on the NHS website, I might add. Again, look at this. So, you go to the doctor, you're feeling a bit down. You don't necessarily, the doctor doesn't ask you, who your circle of friends are. He doesn't ask you your psychological history, whether you've been abused or suffered any traumas. In fact, they don't even want to address trauma. They don't even want to admit it exists. And then, you're handed these pills that he says you have to take. And then you wonder why you feel worse. And one of the biggest things, I don't know if I've written there actually, but it's really important to say is a lot of suicidal people go to the doctors for help and they're given these drugs, and one of the biggest side effects is an increase in suicidal tendencies. Imagine this. This is terrible. And we wonder why so many young people are so messed up psychologically. Not just young people, it's all ages, but okay, the side effects, as I said, direct effects: feeling agitated, shaky or anxious, feeling and being sick, indigestion and stomach aches, diarrhea, constipation, loss of appetite, dizziness, not sleeping well, insomnia or feeling very sleepy, headaches, loss of libido, difficulties achieving orgasm during masturbation or sex, and difficulties obtaining or maintaining an erection. Those are very important to point out when you actually, those last ones about the sexual function, really, really important if you study Alexander Lowen and Wilhelm Reich, because they talk about libido as an energy force, one that needs to be expelled naturally through sex or masturbation, and is actually to reduce anxiety, because that force, if it's not expelled, will go into the system as anxiety. Now, just thinking on that and how this is messing people up is scary to me. Scary, very scary. So they're dampening that natural urge, but also all the other effects as well, like feeling agitated, shaky or anxious. I mean, that would be a reason to go to the doctors, not to be as an effect of a medication. I've known people as well talk about, there was a horror story I heard about for a friend that was someone that was on them and lost the feeling in their legs. Very dangerous chemicals. And this, I've put this in here because people talk about the AI agenda a lot, and I get it. It is part of the big agenda. However, they don't consider that this is actually part of it. What do people say a lot? Many people who have been on antidepressants often report not feeling themselves or even feeling like a robot. Now, I guarantee if you know people that have been on them, they would have said something similar to this. And This is because on antidepressants, people's natural emotions are literally numbed. So actually, what it does is it robs people of the bad feelings, the depression, the anxiety, the anger, but it also robs them of the joy, the happiness, and the bliss. That's duality. We have natural duality. We go through things of life that are difficult, and our emotions are there to help guide us. That's what they are. They're like friends. See them as internal friends. That's what I see them like. Therefore, people may not feel sad or depressed, but they also can't feel joy or happiness, like I just said. And I feel personally, this is actually part of the AA agenda. They don't necessarily need to put a chip in your brain or under your skin. I think a lot of that's blown up anyway, when they're doing this to people and making them automatons because they've got suppressed emotions anyway. This is how it's done. It's not done through chips. Oh, that's a load of crap. It's done like this, turning people into basically like AI machines who can't feel emotion. It's your emotion that's linked to your consciousness that makes you a unique individual expression of consciousness. Emotions are important. And this is the other agenda. I really feel like this is done deliberately as well. It's to purge what's called sacred anger. To become emotionally numb is to also purge sacred anger. There is always a time to be angry, and through the use of these mind-numbing chemicals, people's anger has been removed, which makes a good slave. If you can't get angry, you can't fight back. Therefore, you're easier to manipulate and control. Do you see how nefarious this is? Anger is extremely important because it gets shit done. And actually, I've put this in again. I know I've used this a few times, but if you actually look at this chart, David R. Hawkins, he came up with this map of consciousness. And it goes from shame and its energy frequency being only 20, which is the emotional state of humiliation, the view of life. If you're in shame, will be generally miserable. It's the lowest state of consciousness a human being can be in. And you've got enlightenment at the top. And if you actually look at all these things here, if you look at anger, anger is the first one out of that kind of darkness. To me, anger is the turning point. So below anger, you've got desire, fear, grief, apathy, guilt, and shame. But above anger comes pride, courage. And that's where things start to change, look, and you become a much more harmonious and balanced individual. And to take these emotions away, how can a soul progress? We have to progress through these states. They're there for a reason. You're actually killing a soul's progression by killing their emotions. Oh, and then continuing on, this is what we have today. I imagine there'll probably be a DSM-6 coming out, but this is the 5th edition. It's released in 2013, and it includes new conditions such as temper dysregulation and with dysphoria, which is called TDD. They're trying to turn, basically, a 2-year-old's temper tantrums into a disorder. Again, do you see the anger link there? It's natural for a human baby to feel anger and to push boundaries, and because that shows them who they are on an individual freedom. That's freedom. They want to find their freedom. Of course, I'm not suggesting that a 2-year-old then goes out into the world. They still need guidance. But to turn this into a disease is absolute nonsense. And the ultimate, this one, when I first heard about this, I nearly pissed myself laughing. I was working somewhere with young people, and I wasn't a therapist at the time, and they tried to push out that this is a new syndrome that they found and how to work with these children who have this, and it's and I've put there the most obvious syndrome to make children conform and live under control: oppositional defiant disorder, or ODD. Excuse me. To actually oppose, and go against what someone's saying and maybe thinks outside the box and have your own independence is now being called a disorder. Do you see where this leads? It leads to complete control of human beings. It's disgusting. I literally nearly pissed myself laughing when I saw that. That's not a disorder. A child just shows, you ask a child to do something, they say no. They're just expressing their natural born freedom. They don't want to do that thing. And it starts in school, doesn't it? Sit down, do your maths, do your English, do whatever. Don't question. If you want to go to the toilet, you have to put your hand up. That's where it starts. And now they want kids drugged to make them not, not oppositional. Some of the most beautiful souls are oppositional. It does make me emotional. It does make me angry. This is the last one I've put in here because I think it's important. It's so important what he says here. Freud, he says, I do not doubt that it would be easier for fate to take away your suffering than it would for me. But you will see for yourself that much has been gained if we succeed in turning your hysterical misery into common unhappiness. I think that is a beautiful, powerful quote, because what he's saying is life comes with common unhappinesses. We all have stress, we all have challenges, we all have things that are difficult, but we don't run from them and drag ourselves to the eyeballs and trying to escape. That is not heroic at all. The hero faces his challenges and he triumphs. And that's what we've lost, or what they're trying to drown out of us, is that heroic, masculine energy that's necessary. We all have masculine and feminine energy, but they're trying to kill the masculine. It's wrong. Anyway, I hope that's given you food for thought. I haven't even touched on some of the treatments they would do in some of these psychiatric hospitals. You need a strong stomach because it's basically torture. Well, it is torture. It's not basic, it is torture. And I might, it depends on how I feel, and if I have a strong enough stomach, I might do a video on that. But yeah, hopefully this does give you food for thought. The easiest conspiracy to find is this one, I believe. Alright guys, see you in the next one.